The alien ship floated high above the green world. Its hull shimmered in the starlight, cloaked against the human satellites that drifted like lazy insects below. Inside, Dr. Zorax Pell pressed his six-fingered hands against the edge of the observation table. His wide eyes blinked twice, focusing on the feeds streaming across the glass-like surface. Villages, roads, humans moving about their daily lives. Ridiculous creatures, he thought, always chasing something, always fighting each other, always shouting. They were primitive, they were unpredictable, they were fascinating. "Surveillance feeds are active," reported his assistant Lunto. She had 6 narrow eyes that blinked in sequence, like shutters opening and closing. Her voice was calm, professional, but there was a faint edge of excitement. "Excellent," Zorax muttered, leaning forward in his hover chair. "Perhaps today will offer something other than their obsession with, what do they call it?" "Selfies," Lunto replied, "pictures of their own faces." Zorax groaned softly. "Yes, their most common ritual. A species that has split the atom built machines to touch the edge of their moon, and they use their greatest invention to photograph lunch." Lunto almost smiled. "Quadrant 7 is active, sir." Zorax flicked his fingers, shifting the view. The feed zoomed to a small settlement tucked against a pine forest. Cabins with steep roofs, smoke rising from chimneys. Humans walking along dirt paths. They called the place New Haven. 15,000 humans lived there, according to the census stolen from their primitive data webs. Families, farmers, a scattering of merchants and hunters, children, always children. "Primitive," Zorax said again, though his chest tightened with the word. Lunto leaned closer. "Sir, a child has wandered beyond the perimeter." The feed zoomed again, and Zorax saw her. A small female, no more than 6 planetary rotations. Copper-colored head fibers tied in a short tail. She clutched a soft toy in her arms, a plush animal, stitched and worn from love. "Another cub," Zorax said dismissively. "Nothing unusual." "Sir," Lunto's voice trembled. Her eyes darted across the scanner readouts. "What is it?" Zorax asked. She magnified the adjacent section of forest. The scanners painted outlines in red, heat signatures, movement. Zorax's throat went dry. "No," he whispered, "that's impossible." The reading was unmistakable. A Tarlik, one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. A hunter designed by nature and perfected by cruelty. 3 meters tall, armored hide, claws coated with natural toxins, jaws strong enough to crush steel. It had no business on Earth. "What in the 7 moons is a Tarlik doing here?" Zorax demanded. His voice cracked. Lunto's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. "Confirmed, sir, it is moving toward the child." "Check your instruments," Zorax barked. "This must be an error. Tarliks are controlled, heavily restricted. They are never released without." The creature burst from the tree line on the feed. Dark, massive, its head turned, nostrils flaring, it locked on the tiny human child. Zorax rose sharply from his hover chair. "No, this cannot be." The little girl looked up. Her face showed no fear, just confusion. She had no framework to understand the monster rushing toward her. "Intervene," Zorax snapped. "Emergency teleport." His fingers slammed across the controls. But the systems blinked red. Too far, too many interference fields. He couldn't lock onto the girl in time. "No," his voice broke. "We're too late." The Tarlik thundered forward, claws ready. And then, a blare of motion. A human male erupted from a nearby dwelling, sprinting with impossible speed. His body was small compared to the Tarlik, barely 80 kilograms of fragile bone and muscle. In his hand, he carried nothing but a crude metal blade, a knife. He put himself between the child and the monster. Zorax froze. "What is he doing?" Lunto whispered. "He is protecting the cub," Zorax answered, barely believing the words, "even though she is not his offspring." The Tarlik roared. The sound alone would paralyze most sentient beings, but the man did not retreat. He shouted over the roar. "Kira, run, get inside now." The girl hesitated. Then her small legs pumped furiously, carrying her back toward the cabins. The Tarlik tried to circle, but the man shifted, blocking its path with his own body. Zorax's hearts hammered. Fascinating. The Tarlik charged. The human charged too. They met with a sound like thunder. The Tarlik's claws slashed, cutting across the man's arms and torso. Blood sprayed, yet the human moved with precision. His knife plunged upward, straight into the Tarlik's glowing eye. The creature shrieked, staggering back. How did he know? Zorax gasped. The ocular cavity is one of the few vulnerable points, but humans have never encountered Tarliks. How could he know? He didn't, Lunto whispered. He guessed. The Tarlik swept a clawed arm, striking the man. He flew through the air, crashing against a tree. He should have stayed down. But he rose, bloody, wounded, poison coursing through his body, yet he stood. Zorax stared at the bioscanner. The toxin, it is not affecting him. His body is producing compounds, neutralizing it. That is impossible, Lunto breathed. The man crouched, knife still in hand, ready to fight again. More humans arrived, 3 males, 2 females. They carried primitive weapons, rifles, old, clunky, nothing compared to Confederation arms. Yet they moved with discipline. They spread out. They aimed for the Tarlik's joints, its other eye, its weak spots. The Tarlik roared again, but for the first time, it looked uncertain. The humans fired in unison. The forest echoed with gunfire. Zorax leaned closer to the feed, his breath shallow. His entire career had been built on cataloging the weaknesses of species, on showing how humans were provincial, unprepared, unworthy of the stars. But here they were, facing one of the deadliest predators in the galaxy, with nothing but crude weapons and sheer will. And they were winning. Zorax whispered, "By the moons, what have we unleashed?" The Tarlik stumbled, half-blind, bleeding, overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. It collapsed onto the forest floor with a final roar. The humans cheered, though the man with the knife fell to his knees, blood pouring from his wounds. "Kira," he shouted hoarsely, "stay inside." The little girl's voice carried faintly back, "Thomas." Zorax turned toward Lunto. His assistant's eyes were wide with terror. "Sir," she whispered, "the Tarlik was not alone." The scanners flared red. Above Earth, hidden in orbit, a Tarlik ship uncloaked. It pulsed with transmissions. "Distress signal," Lunto said, her voice shook. "It's broadcasting Earth's coordinates." Zorax's entire body went cold. Not just one hunter. A fleet. Coming here. And the humans had no idea what was about to descend on their world. The command deck of the research vessel burned with noise. Alarms flashed. Voices clashed. The crew of the cloaked Confederation ship scrambled like ants disturbed from their nest. Zorax Pell burst onto the deck, his hover chair forgotten, his legs carrying him faster than he'd moved in years. Lunto stumbled behind him, her 6 eyes blinking wildly. Captain Drex stood at the center console. A towering Valyrian with blue ridges along his skull, Drex radiated authority like a weapon. His voice cut through the chaos. "Jam that distress signal, now." "It's too late, Captain," one officer stammered. "The Tarlik transmission is out. Multiple Confederation relays have already received it." "Then trace it," Drex snapped. "Find out who authorized a Tarlik hunter to be deployed on Earth." Zorax shoved his way forward. "Captain, what is happening? Why is there a Tarlik on this planet?" Drex turned, his ridges darkening. "That is none of your concern, xenobiologist Pell." "Not my concern," Zorax barked. His throat felt raw, his chest tight. "A Tarlik predator just attacked a human child, a precontact species. This is a violation of at least 7 Confederation treaties." Drex leaned close, his shadow falling over Zorax. "You are here to observe, not to question." "Observe," Zorax spat. "You call this observation. This is interference of the highest order." The command deck went silent for a heartbeat. All eyes turned. Even the hum of the engines seemed to pause. Finally, Drex exhaled slowly. He gestured to his officers. "Clear the deck, now." The crew obeyed, doors hissed shut. The 2 of them and Lunto were alone. Drex tapped a sequence on the console, activating a shimmering field around the command center. A security shield. No one could hear them now. "Fine," Drex said. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "You want the truth, you will have it." Zorax stiffened. Lunto pressed closer to him, trembling. "The Tarlik was not a mistake," Drex said. "It was deployed deliberately. This planet has been selected for Project Harbinger." The words hit Zorax like a physical blow. He stumbled back. "No." "Project Harbinger," Drex continued, is a Confederation Special Operations Initiative to assess the military potential of precontact species. Humanity was chosen as the test subject. You're testing them, Zorax's voice cracked, by unleashing predators against their children. Drex's mouth curled in what passed for a smile. Exactly. That is monstrous, Zorax shouted, his heart pounded in his chest. Humans are not lab animals, they are sentient beings. They are dangerous, Drex shot back. Aggressive, territorial, and far too adaptable. Their planet is rich in resources. Their population is spreading faster than projections. We need to know if they are a potential ally or a threat. Zorax shook his head violently. So you provoke them, you drop a Tarlik in their forests and watch how they respond. That child. Was bait, Drex interrupted coldly. Lunto gasped. Zorax's stomach twisted. He had seen many horrors in his long career, but this was deliberate cruelty. You underestimate them, Zorax whispered. Drex's ridges flared. No, Pell, you overestimate them. They are primitives with sticks and knives. One Tarlik killed hundreds of Valyrian soldiers during the War of Runes. Do you honestly believe humans can stand against them? Zorax thought of the man. The knife, the eye, the blood, the way he rose again, poisoned yet unbroken. Yes, Zorax said quietly, I do. Before Drex could reply, the communication panel chimed. A stern visage appeared on the screen. Broad shoulders, pale eyes, the insignia of power etched across his armor. Commander Altervex, head of Confederation Special Operations. Zorax's limbs went cold. Why would he contact a research vessel? Captain Drex, Vex said without preamble. Report on the containment status of Project Harbinger. Drex straightened. Containment compromised, Commander. The Tarlik engaged with the human subjects. It was neutralized. Its vessel transmitted a locator beacon before destruction. Vex's expression did not flicker. Unfortunate. Implement Phase 2 immediately. Phase 2, Zorax blurted, unable to contain himself. You're escalating after this violation. Vex's cold eyes shifted toward him. And you are? Xenobiologist Pell, Drex answered quickly. His tone carried warning. Vex regarded Zorax for a long moment. Ah, the human expert. His voice dripped with disdain. Your clearance is limited, xenobiologist. You would do well to remember that. With all respect, Commander, Zorax said, his voice shaking with rage. I am the leading expert on human biology and behavior aboard this vessel. If there is an operation involving them, I should be informed. A tense silence. Finally, Vex nodded once. Very well, Captain Drex, brief him on the parameters of Project Harbinger. His expertise may prove useful. The transmission cut. Zorax turned slowly toward Drex. The captain's ridges pulsed dark blue, a sign of irritation. You see, Drex said, this is bigger than you, pal, bigger than research, bigger than treaties. He leaned closer, his breath hot and foul. Project Harbinger will continue. Phase 2 involves multiple Tarlik deployments across diverse human environments. Zorax's throat tightened. You are kidnapping their children, testing their defenses for what? Recruitment or extermination? Drex's smile was razor-sharp. Both. If they survive, perhaps they join us. If they prove too dangerous, he shrugged. Then we eliminate them. Zorax's heart's hammered, his vision swam. He remembered the child's wide eyes, the man's bloody defiance. You are making a critical error, Zorax whispered. Drex chuckled. Error, humans are primitives, they will break quickly. Zorax pointed at the feed still frozen on the screen. The man, crouched, knife in hand, blood pouring from his arms and still ready to fight. Do you know what humans call that behavior? Zorax asked softly. Drex tilted his head. Foolishness. Zorax's eyes narrowed. Heroism. Drex scoffed. Poetic nonsense. No, Zorax said firmly. It is more than poetry. It is their mythology, their survival code. By threatening their children, you have not broken them. You have united them. Drex's ridges darkened further. Enough. You will return to your observation post, and you will remember your place. But even as he spoke, the scanners pulsed again. Lunto gasped. Captain, new readings, multiple human settlements, military mobilization detected, secure communication networks established. Zorax's eyes widened. That was fast, too fast. Drex frowned. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting, Zorax said slowly, that humans may not be as primitive as you think. They have always excelled at one thing above all others. And what is that? Drex demanded. Zorax turned his gaze back to the feed, where the wounded man was being carried by his people, his eyes still burning with fire. Warfare, Zorax whispered. The deck shook violently, alarms screamed. An officer's voice cracked over the comm. Captain, we are detecting unusual activity in Earth's orbit. Drex spun, explain. The answer came with a flood of impossible data. Ships, dozens of them, human vessels uncloaking above their world. Zorax staggered back. No, this cannot be. Humans are pre-spaceflight. They have barely touched their moon. Lunto's voice trembled. Apparently not. On the display, angular ships bristling with weapons locked into defensive formation around Earth. The Confederation wasn't testing primitives anymore. They had just provoked a species that had been preparing in secret. And the war that began over a cub was about to ignite the stars. The detention chamber glowed white, sterile and cold. A faint hum filled the air, the sound of a force field, invisible but strong enough to stop a charging beast. Inside the field sat a human. Thomas Reeve. His chest was bare, bandaged in strips of alien fabric. Wounds crossed his arms and torso, ragged lines where the Tarlik's claws had torn through flesh. Yet his posture was calm, steady. He sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes sharp, studying every corner of the room. Zorax Pell entered, escorted by 2 Valyrian guards. His throat was dry, his hands twitching. He had seen this man through a screen, had watched him face death with nothing but a knife. And now here he was, contained like an animal. Xenobiologist Pell, one guard said. Commander Vex ordered you to conduct the assessment. The specimen has been implanted with a translation module. Zorax's stomach twisted. The Confederation inserted crude devices into the man's skull to force communication. Painful, cruel, unnecessary. He waved the guards away. Leave us. The guards hesitated. Now, Zorax snapped. His voice held more authority than he felt. The guards obeyed, the door hissing shut. Silence filled the chamber. Zorax approached the force field slowly. Can you understand me? He asked in halting English. The human's eyes locked onto his. Perfectly, Thomas said. His voice was rough but steady. Though I'd appreciate if you stopped calling me specimen. My name is Thomas Reeve. Zorax froze. The man's pronunciation was flawless, his tone confident. My apologies, Thomas Reeve, Zorax said. I am xenobiologist Zorax Pell. Thomas tilted his head. You're different from the others. Your eyes, they carry something the others lack. Zorax blinked. And what is that? Conscience, Thomas said simply. The word pierced Zorax like a blade. He cleared his throat. You seem remarkably composed for someone in your situation. Thomas gave a thin smile. This isn't my first encounter with non-terrestrial intelligence. Zorax's heart skipped. You mean you've had previous contact? Thomas's gaze hardened. Let's just say your Confederation isn't the only organization with an interest in Earth. You thought we were blind, primitive. You were wrong. Zorax glanced at the security camera above them. Every word was being recorded. He lowered his voice. The Tarlik, how did you know where to strike? Thomas leaned forward, his face inches from the shimmering barrier. It was hunting a child. I didn't think, I acted. Humans don't need a manual to protect the innocent. But you targeted the eye, Zorax pressed. That was precise. Instinct alone cannot explain it. Thomas's smile faded. Do you think courage is rational? Do you think a father or mother calculates before throwing themselves in front of a predator? No, it's not logic, it's something deeper. Was the child yours? Zorax asked softly. Thomas's jaw tightened. No, she was my neighbor's daughter. Her name is Kira. Zorax's chest clenched. Then why risk your life? Why endure poison and claws for a cub that shares no blood with you? Thomas's eyes burned. Because that's what it means to be human. We protect our own, even when they're not ours, even when it kills us. Zorax swallowed hard. Most species prioritize only genetic continuity. Sacrifice for non-relatives is rare. Thomas shook his head. Not for us. We're community builders. We don't survive alone. We stand together. And when someone threatens a child, any child, they find out what humans are really made of. The words struck Zorax with the weight of truth. He had seen it in the feeds, the way the humans rallied, the way their rifles had fired in unison, their bodies moving as one. "You don't understand what your confederation has started," Thomas said, "but you will soon." The chamber door hissed open. Commander Vex entered, flanked by guards. His pale eyes swept the room, cold and sharp. "That's enough," Vex said. "You've confirmed the translation module works. Now leave the interrogation to professionals." Zorax's heart pounded. He knew what interrogation meant: pain, cruelty. "Commander," Zorax said quickly, "I strongly advise against hostile engagement with this human. My research—" "Your research," Vex cut him off, "is irrelevant. Project Harbinger is entering its final phase." Zorax froze. Final phase already. Vex's voice was calm, clinical. "The Tarlik fleet has altered course. They will arrive in 2 planetary rotations." Zorax's breath caught. 17 ships, each carrying hunters. Vex's eyes glimmered. "And this specimen will help us prepare for the human response." Zorax's stomach turned to stone. He knew exactly what that meant: experiments, torture. The guards stepped forward to escort him out. But before they reached him, Thomas spoke again. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You should listen to him, Commander." Vex turned, sneering. "And why is that primitive?" Thomas stood, his bloody bandages stark against his skin. His eyes burned with quiet fire. "Because the war you started when you targeted that cub," Thomas said, "isn't going to end the way you think." For the first time, Zorax saw something flicker across Commander Vex's face. Not fear, not yet, but uncertainty. Zorax was dragged from the chamber, his mind spinning. In that moment, he knew the Confederation had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They thought humans were weak because of their compassion. They believed protecting children was a vulnerability. But Zorax understood now. It was their greatest strength. And the storm was only beginning. House arrest was a cage without bars. Zorax Pell sat slumped on his resting pod, staring at the shifting patterns in the ceiling. The containment field hummed faintly around his quarters, reminding him every second that he was no longer trusted. His career, decades of study, careful neutrality, all reduced to this. He had filed his protest, official and formal. It would vanish into the void. The Confederation did not care. "Visitor approaching," the automated system announced. The door slid open. Lunto entered, her 6 eyes darting nervously to the corners. She held a small device in one trembling hand, a portable scrambler. The hum of the containment field stuttered, then quieted. "You shouldn't be here," Zorax whispered. "Association with me is career suicide." "Perhaps I value truth more than career," Lunto said softly. She placed a cube on the table. It flickered to life, projecting a holographic display of Earth's orbit. Zorax gasped. Dozens of vessels hovered above the planet. Sleek, angular, bristling with weapons, they moved with discipline, forming a defensive perimeter. "This is impossible," Zorax breathed. "Humans are pre-spaceflight. They cannot build ships of this scale without detection." "Apparently they can," Lunto said. "They revealed themselves only 30 minutes ago, simultaneously across all orbital stations, cloaked until now." Zorax leaned forward, eyes wide. The designs were crude by Confederation standards, blocky, utilitarian, but they radiated purpose. These were not exploration vessels, they were warships. "How," Zorax whispered, "how did they build this without our knowledge?" "They have been preparing," Lunto said, "for decades, perhaps longer." Zorax's heart pounded. His entire field of study collapsed in on itself. Everything he thought he knew about humanity, wrong. They weren't stumbling toward the stars. They had been hiding their steps. He whispered the only truth that fit. They were never the prey, they were waiting for the predator. The chamber lights flickered, sirens wailed. Alert, hull breaches detected. Unknown hostiles boarding. Lunto's eyes widened. "They're here." Zorax's limbs trembled. Not the Tarliks. The door to his quarters exploded inward in a shower of sparks and metal. Smoke rolled in. Through it stepped Thomas Reeve. Alive. Unarmed but flanked by 2 humans in sleek combat armor, faces hidden by dark visors. Their movements were sharp, efficient, professional soldiers. Thomas's gaze locked on Zorax. His expression was calm, almost conversational. "Dr. Pell, I believe we have unfinished business." Zorax staggered to his feet. "How did you? You were contained." Thomas gave a thin smile. "Your ship's defenses are sophisticated but predictable, and humans have never had much respect for cages." One of the armored soldiers tossed a small device to Lunto. It adhered to her exoskeleton with a click. "Portable translator," Thomas explained. "Less painful than the one your Confederation installed in me." Lunto blinked all 6 eyes in shock. Zorax steadied himself. "What do you want from us?" "From your assistant," Thomas said. "Nothing, she's free to leave with the evacuation pods. From you," his voice hardened. "Information about Project Harbinger, about the Tarlik fleet, about Confederation defenses." "You're asking me to commit treason," Zorax said. "I'm offering you the chance to prevent a massacre," Thomas replied. His tone was calm, but underneath it lay steel. "Your Confederation started this war. Help us end it." The ship shuddered violently. Somewhere deep in its hull, an explosion roared. Lights flickered, alarms screamed. "Your crew is abandoning ship," Thomas said. "Captain Drex has already fled. Commander Vex is being escorted to one of our detention facilities as we speak." Zorax froze. "You captured Vex." Thomas's eyes glinted. "Humans are very good at removing threats. Now, will you help us?" Lunto's trembling hand found Zorax's arm. "We both know there's only one choice." Zorax closed his eyes. The Confederation had betrayed its own codes, abandoned its treaties, turned science into cruelty. "I will help you," he said finally. "But I want asylum for myself and Lunto, and I want access to your research facilities." Thomas considered, then nodded. "Done." Zorax moved quickly to the data terminal, bypassing the security lockouts with his override codes. Streams of data poured out: fleet movements, Tarlik attack patterns, Confederation communication protocols. "The Tarliks are mercenaries," Zorax explained. "Biological weapons dealers. The Confederation hired them for deniability. 17 combat vessels, each carrying 50 hunters. Their technology is outdated. Their strength lies in terror, not firepower." Thomas relayed the information to his comms. "Target their morale, not their armor," he said simply. Another explosion rocked the ship. Smoke spilled through the vents. "Time to go," Thomas said. He gestured toward the breach point. Zorax followed, Lunto at his side. They stepped into a docking corridor ripped open by human breachers. On the other side waited a vessel unlike anything Zorax had seen in Confederation records. Sleek, predatory, human. "Welcome to the HSV Nightingale," Thomas said as they boarded. "Named after a healer. Appropriate, don't you think?" The vessel detached from the Confederation ship. Through the viewport, Zorax watched his old home shrink and die, its systems collapsing as humans stripped it of its core. Zorax turned to Thomas. "What exactly is your plan?" Thomas guided him to the command center. Dozens of humans worked at stations, their eyes sharp, their movements efficient. At the center stood an older woman with short gray hair and piercing eyes. "Admiral Helena Vega," Thomas said, "commander of the Earth Defense Fleet." The Admiral's gaze settled on Zorax. "So this is the Confederation xenobiologist who studied us." Zorax inclined his head weakly. You've read my research." "For 30 years, Vega said. Her voice was calm, cool. "You wanted to understand us. That makes you useful if you're willing to stand with us." Zorax's limbs trembled. "I never wanted war." "Neither did we," Vega said. "But when someone hunts our children, they don't leave us a choice." The deck shuddered again. Alarms flashed red. "Admiral," an officer called. "The Tarlik fleet has dropped out of hyperspace, establishing orbit behind the moon." "Right on schedule." Vega's voice was ice. "Open a channel." The main display shifted to show the Tarlik commander, a massive beast armored in ridged black scales, eyes like pits of fire. "This is Admiral Vega of the Earth Defense Fleet," she said without preamble. "Your presence in our space is an act of war. You have one chance to retreat." The Tarlik commander bared his teeth, laughter rumbling from his throat. "Humans, your kind can barely reach your moon. You dare threaten us." Vega's expression did not change. She gestured to her officer, who transmitted a file. The Tarlik glanced off-screen. His sneer faltered, confusion, then concern. Vega's voice cut like steel. That is a complete readout of your fleet, your shields, your weapons, your vessel locations, along with targeting solutions for every ship. Do not doubt us. The Tarlik growled. We were contracted by the Confederation to test you. That contract remains. Then deliver this message back to your masters, Vega said coldly. The experiment is over, and humanity is not prey. Beside her, Thomas leaned forward, his voice low, deadly calm. You made one mistake, Commander. You went after a child. Do you know what that means for us? It means every human on this planet, all 8 billion of us, now sees you as an existential threat. We will not stop. We will not forget. Leave now or be destroyed. The Tarlik commander snarled, but hesitation flickered in his eyes. Vega's voice was ice. You have 30 seconds. Zorax's breath caught. He had studied Tarliks for years. They never retreated, never yielded. And yet the commander barked orders. The fleet began to turn, preparing to flee. For the first time in his long career, Zorax Pell saw the impossible. The Tarliks retreating. Because of humans. Because of one cub. The command deck of the HSV Nightingale buzzed with quiet tension. Screens glowed with streams of data. Officers whispered in clipped tones, fingers dancing across controls. The Tarlik fleet, once so confident, had turned tail and slipped into hyperspace. Zorax Pell stood frozen in the middle of it all. His 6-fingered hands trembled as he whispered to himself. Tarliks do not retreat, not ever. But they had. Because of human resolve, because of a threat spoken with calm certainty. Admiral Vega broke the silence. Maintain alert status, deploy hunter-killer drones, ensure no Tarlik vessels linger in the system. Aye, Admiral, came the crisp reply. Zorax turned slowly to Thomas Reeve, who stood at her side like a shadow. Bandages still clung to his torso, stained red, but his eyes were steady, his stance unyielding. You bluffed, Zorax said, his voice unsteady. You didn't have targeting solutions for all 17 ships. Admiral Vega's lips curved faintly. We had solutions for 12, the other 5 we would have improvised. Zorax shook his head in disbelief, and yet they fled. Predators are pragmatic, Vega said. When they sense the risk outweighs the reward, they withdraw. Thomas stepped closer, his gaze sharp, and we made sure they believed the risk was absolute. Zorax's throat tightened. He had spent his life studying species, cataloging instincts, fear, hunger, reproduction, yet in humans he saw something else, something harder to define. They fought not only to survive, but to prove themselves, to protect not just their own offspring, but each other, to make a stand even when reason said to flee. It unsettled him, it awed him. What happens now? Lunto asked nervously. Her 6 eyes blinked out of rhythm, a sign of deep anxiety. Admiral Vega gestured to a massive holographic display. A galactic map unfolded, stars and systems marked in different colors. Confederation strongholds glowed red, neutral systems in gray, unknown territories in black. Now, Vega said, we prepare for the Confederation's response. They won't take this lightly. Zorax studied the map, his stomach sinking. They'll send a battle group at minimum, 5 to 7 capital ships plus escorts, 30,000 troops. Perfect, Vega said flatly. Zorax spun toward her, horrified. Perfect, that's enough firepower to glass your planet. Vega's eyes narrowed, a glint of iron within them. Only if they can get close enough, and thanks to the intelligence you've provided, Dr. Pell, they won't. She gestured again, the hologram shifted. Expanding rings of light appeared around Earth. Defensive satellites, stealth stations, hyperspace disruption fields. Zorax staggered back. This is impossible. Humans couldn't have built this without detection. Thomas's voice was quiet, steady. We had help. Zorax's eyes widened. Help from whom? Thomas met his gaze. Not every species agrees with the Confederation's methods. Some fled, some hid, some found us. Vega folded her arms. Your Confederation believes Earth is a child world, but we've been learning, building, preparing for 70 years, quietly, patiently, out of sight. Zorax's mind reeled. His reports, his warnings, his years of careful observation, all of it had been incomplete. Humans hadn't been stumbling toward the stars. They had been climbing in secret. How long, he whispered. Thomas exchanged a glance with Vega. She gave a curt nod. Thomas stepped closer to Zorax. Do you know the year 1947? Roswell. Zorax frowned. The incident your species dismissed as a weather balloon. Not a balloon, Thomas said. A ship. Refugees from a system your Confederation conquered centuries ago. They crashed. We recovered their technology, reverse-engineered what we could. Zorax's hearts thudded. The Arcturian expansion. Exactly, Thomas said. Survivors made it to Earth. We sheltered them, learned from them, kept it secret while governments argued and stumbled. For decades, everything stayed compartmentalized, hidden. And then, Zorax asked. Then another species came, Thomas said, his voice darkening. Not to study us, not to recruit us, to harvest us. Zorax's breath caught. Harvest. They killed millions, Thomas said flatly. Before we fought them off, before we learned how to turn desperation into weapons, we survived, and we promised ourselves never again. Zorax stared numb. The pieces clicked into place. The rapid mobilization, the hidden fleet, the way Thomas fought the Tarlik like he had seen monsters before. Humanity hadn't been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. Vega's voice snapped Zorax from his thoughts. Dr. Pell, we need you. You understand the Confederation better than anyone here, their fleets, their doctrines, their weaknesses. Zorax hesitated. You want me to betray my own people? They betrayed you first, Thomas said quietly. His eyes burned. They broke their own treaties. They threw children to monsters, you know it. Zorax's throat ached. He thought of Kira, the copper-haired girl clutching her toy. He thought of Thomas bleeding in the dirt, rising again when logic said he should have died. Perhaps the Confederation was not his people anymore. What do you want from me? He asked. An ambassador, Vega said. Someone who can speak both languages, someone who can tell the Confederation the truth, that humanity is not prey, that we will not kneel, and that cooperation is the only alternative to extinction. Zorax's limbs trembled. He had always dreamed of being remembered as the first voice to bridge two species. Not like this, not through blood and fire, but perhaps it was the only way. I accept, he said finally. Thomas's hard expression softened just slightly. Then we fight together. Before Zorax could reply, alarms flared across the deck. Admiral, an officer shouted. Multiple hyperspace signatures. A Confederation battle group just entered the system. Zorax's breath caught. They're here already. Vega's eyes hardened. So soon. On the main display, 5 massive capital ships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls glimmering like blades. Smaller escorts swarmed around them, a swarm of steel and fire. The Confederation had come. Not with diplomacy, not with restraint. With war. The void above Earth burned with light. 5 Confederation capital ships loomed against the stars, their silver hulls gleaming like predators poised for the kill. Escorts swarmed in formation, frigates, destroyers, carriers, a battle group large enough to crush an emerging world in hours. Zorax Pell stood at the viewport of the HSV Nightingale, his limbs trembling. He knew those ships. He had studied their schematics, written reports on their strengths. Each one carried firepower enough to glass continents. 30,000 troops, war machines bred for conquest. The Confederation had not come to negotiate. They had come to erase. Admiral Vega's voice was steel. All defense stations engage Phase 1, disrupt hyperspace lanes, lock weapons. Her officers moved like clockwork, voices sharp and efficient. The humans didn't panic. They didn't scramble. They prepared. Zorax whispered, You cannot win. Confederation war doctrine is overwhelming assault. They will not stop. Vega didn't look at him. Then we won't give them the chance. Thomas Reeves stood beside her, bandaged but steady. His eyes never left the display. Target their arrogance, he said. That's always been their weakness. The battle began. Confederation destroyers surged forward, cannons charging. But before they could fire, the void itself seemed to ripple. From behind Earth's shadow, human satellites flickered to life. Not passive machines, weapons platforms, hundreds of them. They flared with brilliant light, unleashing torrents of kinetic slugs and laser bursts. Confederation shields flared, absorbing the first wave, but then the disruption fields activated. Space itself twisted. Hyperspace routes collapsed. The Confederation ships were trapped. Impossible, Zorax gasped. Humans cannot generate hyperspace disruption. They can, Vega said coolly, and they have. Confederation frigates tried to flank, but mines detonated in their path. Automated drones swarmed like hornets, ripping through escorts with ruthless precision. The humans fought differently than any species Zorax had studied. Not with overwhelming power, with traps, with cunning, with layers of deception. Predators turned prey. The first Confederation destroyer exploded in a blossom of fire. The deck of the Nightingale trembled as humans cheered. But Zorax felt no joy, his stomach twisted. He had once admired those ships, had lectured students about their flawless engineering. Now they shattered before his eyes. On the main display, a Confederation battleship unleashed its full fury, plasma cannons tearing through a ring of human satellites. Dozens of defense platforms died in silence, their wreckage burning. Vega's jaw tightened. Phase 2, deploy the fleet. The human warships moved. Zorax's heart skipped. He had known humans possessed ships. He had not realized how many. From orbit, from hidden stations, from cloaked positions in the asteroid belt, vessels emerged. Not elegant like Confederation cruisers. Angular, brutal, built for war. Dozens, hundreds. They surged toward the capital ships. Confederation officers must have been shocked. Zorax could almost hear their disbelief. Pre-contact species, pre-spaceflight, how? The first clash was savage. Human ships darted close, weaving through Confederation fire, striking weak points. They didn't fight with rigid formations. They fought like wolves, unpredictable, relentless. Confederation gunners fired in disciplined volleys, but the humans never stayed where doctrine predicted. They attacked from impossible angles, using their own wreckage as cover, even ramming damaged frigates into larger ships as makeshift weapons. The viewport flared with fire as a Confederation carrier split apart, torn open by a swarm of missile strikes. Zorax pressed his palms against the glass. They're adapting too fast. Thomas's voice was calm, cold. That's what we do. But victory was not certain. The Confederation battleships regrouped, shields overlapping. Plasma storms lashed out, annihilating clusters of human frigates. A cruiser burned, its hull splitting as it fell into Earth's atmosphere. Screams of officers filled the comms. Zorax felt the weight of it. Humans were fierce but fragile. Every death burned them, yet every loss made them fight harder. On the deck, Admiral Vega's voice never wavered. Focus fire on their flagship, blind them. The Nightingale surged with the fleet. Thomas braced against the console, his knuckles white. Aim for their eyes. Confused, Zorax glanced at him. Then he understood, not literal eyes, sensors. Human ships fired volleys of EMP warheads. Bright bursts flared across the Confederation flagship's hull. Its sensors flickered. Its aim faltered. In that moment, the humans struck. A barrage of missiles tore through weakened shields, punching into its side. The flagship shuddered, its hull glowing red. The Confederation battle group wavered. Their discipline cracked. But then a voice filled the comms, cold, familiar. Commander Vex. Zorax's breath caught. He was supposed to have been captured. The holographic screen lit up with his face. His pale eyes burned with fury. Xenobiologist Pell, Vex hissed. I see you stand with the primitives. You betray your own kind. Zorax trembled. Vex, you lied. You violated every treaty. You turned science into slaughter. They are animals, Vex spat. Nothing more, and you will die with them. The flagship's cannons glowed with power. Brace, Vega barked. The viewport flared white. Plasma fire lanced toward the Nightingale. For a heartbeat, Zorax believed it was over. But human ingenuity had one more trick. The Nightingale spun, releasing a swarm of drones. They ignited like stars, intercepting the plasma stream. Explosions rippled through the void, scattering the blast. The Nightingale shook violently, alarms screaming but held. Vega's voice was steel. Return fire, full barrage. Every human ship in range fired as one. Missiles, lasers, kinetic slugs, a storm of fury. The Confederation flagship convulsed under the assault. Its hull cracked, fire bled into space. Then, with a final shudder, it exploded. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield. Confederation escorts scattered. Some fought on, others fled. Discipline collapsed. The battle group was broken. The void fell into silence, broken only by static and the crackle of damaged comms. On the deck of the Nightingale, cheers erupted. Officers wept, embraced, pounded their fists on consoles. Zorak stood in stunned silence. Thomas leaned against the console, his chest rising and falling, his eyes locked on Zorak's. "This is only the beginning," Thomas said quietly. "The Confederation will come again, stronger, angrier, but now they know." Zorak swallowed hard. "Know what?" Thomas's voice was calm, but carried the weight of a promise. "That humanity will never kneel." The battle was over. The void above Earth glimmered with wreckage, burning fragments of steel drifting like embers across the black canvas of space. Confederation vessels fled into hyperspace, their discipline shattered, their arrogance broken. On the command deck of the HSV Nightingale, silence lingered in the aftermath. Officers slumped in their seats, exhausted but alive. Some wept quietly. Others stared at the stars, stunned by what they had just survived. Zorax Pell stood among them, his limbs trembling. He had expected annihilation. Instead, he had witnessed the impossible. The Confederation's finest ships, broken by a species they still called primitive. Admiral Vega straightened, her voice clear and sharp. "Status." "Defenses holding," an officer replied. "Casualties heavy, but the fleet stands, Earth is secure." A ripple of relief swept the deck. Vega's gaze turned to Zorax. Her eyes were cold, but beneath them lay something harder, respect. "Dr. Pell," she said, "you understand what comes next better than any of us. Speak plainly. How will the Confederation respond?" Zorax's throat tightened. "With fury. They will send more fleets, larger ones. They will not accept humiliation from a species they considered beneath them." "Then we make them accept it," Vega said. Thomas Reeve stepped forward. His bandages were soaked, his body battered, but he stood tall. His voice carried the same calm certainty he had shown when facing the Tarlik. "Dr. Pell," Thomas said, "we need you. You know their treaties, their chains of command, their fears. If there's any chance to force peace, it's through you." Zorax's six-fingered hands curled. He thought of Commander Vex's sneer, of Captain Drex's cold orders, of the Confederation treating children as bait. He thought of Kira, the little girl with copper hair clutching her toy. Perhaps the Confederation did not deserve peace, but humanity did. "I will serve as ambassador," Zorax said finally. His voice shook, but the words rang true. "I will carry a message they cannot ignore." Vega nodded once, then prepare it. The message. Hours later, the galaxy itself heard humanity's voice. The transmission spread through every Confederation relay, bouncing across systems, unstoppable. On every screen appeared Admiral Vega. At her side stood Thomas Reeve, and beside him, Zorax Pell. "This is Admiral Helena Vega of the Earth Defense Fleet," Vega began. Her voice was steady, her tone like carved iron. "Your experiment is over. You unleashed predators on our children. You sent fleets to burn our homes. You believed we were weak. You believed compassion was weakness. You were wrong." Thomas stepped forward. His eyes burned with fire. 8 billion of us stand as one. We will fight for every child, every family, every life. You cannot break us. You cannot tame us. You cannot silence us. Zorax swallowed, then spoke, his voice carrying to every Confederation world. "I am xenobiologist Zorax Pell. For decades I studied humanity. I believed them primitive, but I have seen their true strength. It is not their weapons. It is not their technology. It is their will, their unity, their heroism. You have made a critical error. By targeting their cubs, you did not frighten them. You forged them." Vega's voice cut through like a blade. "Leave us in peace or face a war you cannot win. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not forget." The message ended. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy trembled. Confederation worlds buzzed with disbelief. A primitive species had defeated a battle group. The Tarlik mercenaries whispered of humiliation, their reputation scarred. And on Earth, the world changed forever. The hidden fleet emerged from the shadows, no longer whispers in dark hangars or cloaked stations. Humanity revealed itself, united under one banner. Nations that had bickered for centuries now spoke with one voice, bound by survival. Thomas Reeve became a symbol, the man who had faced a Tarlik with nothing but a knife. Songs spread of his defiance. Children played games where they shouted, "Kira, run!" and pretended to fight monsters with wooden sticks. Kira herself became a name on every lip, the cub who had started it all. And Zorax Pell, traitor to the Confederation, savior to humanity, walked a path he had never imagined. From scientist to ambassador, from observer to defector. He carried humanity's message across the stars, knowing every step made him a target. The warning. One night aboard the Nightingale, Zorax found Thomas alone, staring out at the stars. "You were right," Zorax said softly. "The war that began over a cub, it will not end soon." Thomas didn't look away from the void. "Wars never do, but we'll fight it on our terms." Zorax hesitated. "The Confederation will come again, with more ships, with more monsters. Are you ready for that?" Thomas turned, his eyes steady. "Doctor, do you know what humans do best when the universe tries to break us?" Zorax blinked. "What?" Thomas's voice was calm, unshakable. "We adapt, we build, and when someone threatens our children, we fight until the stars themselves burn out." Zorax felt a chill, not of fear, of awe. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if humanity, irrational, reckless, compassionate humanity, might not just survive the Confederation. They might change it. Epilogue. Far across the galaxy, in the heart of Confederation space, Commander Vex stood in the shadow of towering war councils. His pale eyes glimmered with rage. "Humanity has declared war," he hissed. "No," one elder corrected. "Humanity has declared itself." Vex clenched his fists. "Then we will break them." But even as he spoke, whispers spread through the chamber, not of fear, of doubt. Because the Confederation had made a mistake. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not prey. And that mistake would cost them everything,